Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to my annual party. This is literally my favourite time of the year, hosting these meetings. It is absolutely fantastic, and it's particularly fantastic these days when I do it in collaboration with such wonderful colleagues, Martin and his team. So thank you for being here. Yes, the weather is spectacularly Irish, and according to the weather forecast, it's going to stay that way throughout. So you are a captive audience, and I'm delighted about that. The only thing I want to say in just recollection from last year, and I seem not really need to even say it actually because it hasn't happened yet, is if you're at the back chatting with people, please don't do that in the sessions because the acoustics in here are rather good and therefore it's, the noise does actually get around. So if you want to chat, please step outside. So I thought I would just give some kind of introductory talk because I know there are quite a few people here who haven't attended these conferences before and who maybe are new to the field generally. And I talk a little bit about some things that are on my mind and also about why the program for the next 3.5 days is what it is. So let's start with that. As Martin alluded to, a really terrifyingly long time ago, I started to think about and talk about aging in the manner described here as this combination of these two processes, the lifelong creation of damage as side effects of the body's normal operation that eventually leads to the initiation and progression of another process, the creation of declining health, both physical and mental, which I'm calling pathology. And there are these various ways that one might break the link between metabolism and pathology. And the thing that I guess I ended up being most known for nearly 25 years ago now was the idea that the middle one of these, what I'm calling the maintenance option, is actually by far the easiest and most practical and most capable of being implemented in the foreseeable future. This was a pretty radical idea back then, and of course I didn't just describe it in this 40,000-foot manner, I described it in this manner as a classification of the various types of things that constitute damage and a list of corresponding ways to eliminate that damage from the body. And over those 20-odd years, it's very heartening to see first of all, that there's been a great deal of progress in people's labs around the world, including, of course, the labs of the various organizations that I've led. And they are now moving out into the private sector, which is extremely heartening. Of course, the other thing that is heartening is that this is no longer a left-field heterodox idea. It is an idea that for the past 10 years has been extraordinarily fashionable. And for those of you who have been living under a rock for the past decade, this is the thing that made that happen. The paper that came out in 2013 called The Hallmarks of Aging. I'm delighted to say that 2 of the 5 authors of that paper will be speaking in the next few days here to old friends of mine, Manuel Serrano and Maria Blasco. It's extremely heartening that this is now, the whole Hallmarks concept that I pioneered so long ago has really caught on. It's very gratifying no longer to have to justify it to scientific colleagues. But what it means is that another consequence of all the progress that has happened is that I can move on to the second stage that exists for any divide and conquer strategy. The first stage, of course, being the development of the individual components of that divide and conquer strategy, and the second one being combining them. And so LEV Foundation, the organization that Martin and I and a number of other colleagues here, as well as ones who are not here, created a couple of years ago, LEV Foundation's main flagship program is to combine things that already have a certain amount of efficacy. And Martin already said a few words about it. I'm delighted to say that my main scientist, Caitlin Lewis, will be giving a talk going into the specifics of it in a day or two from now. I forget exactly when on the program she is going to be talking about that. But yes, so I won't say any more about that right now, but it is very much what we do. And I am very happy that we're able to. I think I probably ought to say a few words also about why I decided that this organization should be called LEV Foundation. LEV, of course, stands for Longevity Escape Velocity. And over the past, literally, month or so, it's become very apparent that that phrase, which, again, I coined a ridiculously long time ago, has started to enter the mainstream. We are seeing, mainstream articles in such august scientific journals as the Daily Mail discussing this concept. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, I thought I should probably spend a few minutes just describing it. It arises from just really just an abstract mathematical analysis of the concept of damage repair that I spoke about a few minutes ago. If the way in which we are going to break the link between metabolism and pathology, in other words, the link between being alive and being dead, by eliminating damage, in other words, by rejuvenation, then what we will be doing every time once we get to be able to do this rejuvenation reasonably comprehensively, what we will be doing is buying time. If you take someone who is, let's say, 60 years old, and they're an average 60-year-old, so they're biologically 60 as well as being chronologically 60, and you rejuvenate them reasonably well so that they're back to being biologically, let's say, 40, then they won't be biologically 60 again until they're 80, which is handy, really. In fact, it might be a little more than 80 because, of course, the interventions can be applied as often as you like. And so what you will have is a slowing of the progressive accumulation of damage, because the only damage that will be accumulating is the difficult damage that the rejuvenation technologies that you're using are not working on, the ones that are more challenging. Now, that's still not good enough, of course. We don't want to become biologically 60 again at all, certainly not biologically 80. So, that still seems that we've got some way to go to really bring aging under comprehensive medical control. But, of course, during those 20 years that we have bought for our hero, who was 60 at the beginning of this process, during those 20 years, people like me and you, people in this room and many people outside this room, will have been continuing to improve this rejuvenation arsenal, this rejuvenation portfolio, with the result that as and when our hero comes back in, at let's say aged 80 and biologically 60, but not really because all the damage that they're carrying around is now difficult damage, we will be able to re-rejuvenate them because we will have improved the therapies such that some of the damage that used to be difficult is now within the ambit, within the scope of the portfolio that we have. So that we will be able to turn this person who's now 80 back into being biologically 40, and they won't be biologically 60 again until they're 100 or 120 or whatever. So that is what leads to the concept of longevity escape velocity, the idea that there's some finite, in fact quite modest, minimum rate at which we need people like the people in this room to be improving the comprehensiveness of rejuvenation technologies in order to stay one step ahead of the problem, in order that the people who are receiving the state-of-the-art rejuvenation technologies at any particular time will never get to the point where they have so much damage that the pathologies of late life kick off and progress. So that's a very simple concept, really, and it was a great shock to me back in the mid-2000s when I started talking about this, that there was such a viscerally negative reaction to it from my scientific colleagues. I mean, it was irritating that my scientific colleagues were taking so long to understand the concept of rejuvenation and damage repair at all. But as I say, it was a big paradigm shift. And after all, it only took 10 years, which is actually quite rapid for big paradigm shifts in science and technology, before that ceased to be the case. The resistance to the idea of longevity escape velocity has been much more robust, much more deep-seated, if you like. And still, many of our scientific colleagues are, they run away very fast when you talk about it. I have noticed, by the way, that the ones who do not run away very fast tend to be the ones who did maths or computer science or physics as their first degree rather than getting into biology from the beginning. And I don't know whether that says anything about the way you need to think about progress in order to understand this, but that is what I have observed. Right, so that is what longevity escape velocity is. It is our goal. About, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I said this in some interview. I said, we are humanitarians first and foremost, and that has become a bit of a slogan for the movement and also for the organization, because, even though we work on early stage stuff, we are trying to extend the healthy lifespan of mice. We are not doing it for the purpose of extending the healthy lifespan of mice. We're doing it as a means to an end. We're interested in eventually benefiting human beings. And actually, that brings me to the rest of what I want to talk about for the next maybe 5 or 10 minutes, which is the program for the next 3.5 days. So many of you have been coming to my conferences for a lot longer than the time they've been in Dublin, this is only the third Dublin Longevity Summit. I started out doing them in Cambridge back in 2003. And there is one thing that has always existed in these conferences that has made them quite distinctive. In fact, there are a few things. One of them is the free bar every night, which Martin already mentioned. But other people have copied that now. But the main thing that really still marks our conferences out is that in addition to having a very good participation from real household names in the field. I've already mentioned, of course, 2 of the authors of the Hallmarks paper. There's many other people here whose names everyone in the field knows. In addition to the household names, I always take care to bring in quite a lot of people that basically nobody else in the room has heard of before. People who I have come across and are doing really exciting work, but it's work that has not really come to the attention of the aging community. And in fact, the reciprocal is also often true. I am now quite familiar with the experience where I will write to someone and invite them to speak at one of these meetings, and they will write back saying, well, that's very kind, Dr. de Grey, but why are you inviting me? I don't work on aging. And I have to actually explain to them the relevance of their work to this community. So there's quite a few of those at all of these meetings. But one thing that's a little bit special about this year's meeting, which is a little bit different from previous ones, is the sheer number of people and sessions that I've organized that are not actually directly focused on scientific advances, but rather on the broader context of the movement, of the whole crusade. We have sessions on innovative funding mechanisms. We have sessions on innovative regulatory structures and on innovations at the political level. We've always had a couple of talks of that nature in these conferences, but we've got a lot more than a couple this time. And, some of the scientists here may feel, that's not very interesting. And so that's really why I asked Martin and his team to organize the weather to be so quintessentially Irish, because I don't want you to have any excuse for going and being a tourist during those sessions. the reason, of course, I've done this is because the time has come. We are getting to the point where we can be humanitarians first and foremost, where the preclinical work in our laboratories has gone far enough to be starting to move into the clinic, and that means moving into the realm where the regulatory structures, and indeed the funding structures, cannot be ignored. We cannot go on as if, it were business as usual and it was going to be indefinitely long before things ever moved into the clinic. That's just not true anymore. And of course, investors, especially, including early-stage investors, look at the entire process from beginning to end, especially right through to regulatory approval and marketing of new interventions, because that's the time that they start to make money back. So the more progress we make in modernizing and streamlining all of these aspects of the medical story that are involved in taking the things we work on to the point where they benefit human beings, the sooner we actually put more effort into that, the better. And so that's why I felt that this year we should place a considerably greater emphasis and proportion of the conference on that kind of topic. In the same way, is this working still? Wait a second. Oh no, I'm not. Yeah, I forget that I've got my slides here, but I've also got a clicker. In the same way, last year at this conference, we launched something which, because it was launched here, we called the Dublin Longevity Declaration. It's, to my mind, a particularly important milestone in the field, and it's definitely not over yet. The Dublin Longevity Declaration, which was mostly written by my great friend and colleague Brian Kennedy, who's here again this year, and was indeed inspired by Martin, who essentially encouraged Brian to do it. What it is a statement of how well we're doing and how rapidly we are progressing towards comprehensive medical control of aging. This is something that I, of course, have been doing myself for a long time, and I've been encouraging my colleagues within the scientific community to do more of, but that encouragement has fallen on remarkably deaf ears until now. This is a really quite aggressive statement about how soon and how far we may be able to get. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, I encourage you to go and have a look as soon as possible. And of course, we wanted to accumulate signatories to it. So if you look at these signatories, you'll find that the first 100 or 200 of them are professionals in the biology of aging, and mostly senior professors, people with quite a high profile, quite a lot to lose from saying things that their colleagues might view as irresponsible. And yet, there are their names. So that's extremely encouraging. And the other 2,000-odd people who are up there are people who are from the general public, people who simply agree with this and want to express that agreement. Now, honestly, that's where we need the action now. We've got enough luminaries, to give authority to the document, but what gives impact to the document is the sheer number of signatories. I want 200,000 people on that list, and I want that soon, because that is when elected representatives, whose, remember, their single goal in life is to get re-elected, that is when those people will start listening and things will start changing. Of course, there are other ways to get change to happen at the regulatory and governmental level, one of which is to create a whole new government, or at least to create a whole new regime within a new jurisdiction. That is, of course, happening. We're going to be hearing quite a bit at this meeting about that kind of thing, including about a wonderful place called Prospera, which is a special economic zone in Honduras. But yeah, so this has just got to happen more. and it's going to happen more the more people we have expressing their support for it. So I will stop there. I've been able to catch up on the program in order to be able to get the program back on schedule. And I, again, thank you all for being here and for having such an interest in this field. I very much hope that you will enjoy the next 3.5 days as much as I will. Thank you very much.